Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are just going to give it about 60 seconds here as we let the rest of the attendees trickle in. Yeah, thank you, everyone, so much for joining. Obviously, a very important topic. We've got some great guest speakers here, so we'll just give it 20 more seconds, and then we will get this show on the road. The number just keeps going up, though.
An interesting topic. Maybe we hit on that.
Tony, we said 10:32, so I am going to kick it off to you to get this show started.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Just want to make sure that you know today is not a technical webinar. It's going to be just a conversation with two qualified experts, and our goal is simple. It's to protect your identity, your family, and your wealth and your credit. And I really believe for many people, the cybercrime right now is a bigger threat than market volatility. It's probably the number one threat out there to your wealth. So that's why we here at Parr McKnight are addressing it and helping you address it on a personal level. Today, we're going to talk about who the bad guys are, how they operate, and what you can do about it. So we'll talk about the threat, about the defense. We got some experts that have some real life experience, so they're going to talk about some real life situations. And then we're going to cap it off with 5 action steps that you can each take from both Jeff Lanza and Mark Hurley. I'm going to slip in a quick story. Nelson, sorry this wasn't part of the script, but I got an email last night from a client. It was an invitation to a party, and I noticed that 20 people were already attending. I took a screenshot of the email and I texted it to the client and I said, "Is this real?" And he said, "No, I was hacked last week." And just in a prior conversation here with Mark Hurley, he said, had I clicked on that, I would have had a rat on my phone. And that's an invasive species that does a lot of damage. So I was attuned to it. I took a precaution. I verified it and validated it. But man, did that look real.
That's why this
So
is so important.
today, this is not about us. It's about you guys and your protection. But I wanted to share with you real quickly. Parr McKnight, we're a small RIA boutique in Minneapolis. We like to say we give our clients clarity over their full financial picture. I've heard from clients that they have a lot of confidence in working with us as a sounding board or somebody to reason through decisions with. And we've put in a structure that allows for not only the satisfaction of our client needs, but for the anticipation of them. The magic takes place with our people, committed people with 200 years of experience, the process we've put in place that is proactive and anticipatory, and our philosophy of genuine care, get things done, go the extra mile. We're resilient for our clients, and we always have a growth mindset, not only with our business, but with our personal wisdom. We just want to be a little bit better tomorrow than we were today. So, with that, here's why we're hosting this. Your life has really become a financial ecosystem, and protecting that ecosystem is part of the plan today. So, behind the scenes, we're watching what you might not be able to. When your money moves, we're always verifying things with a personal phone call or even a password. We're going to go into more of that at the end. But today, I'd like to introduce you to the two experts we've asked to be on our panel today. They normally give great hour-long presentations, but we wanted to host this as more of a conversation. We've got Jeff Lanza. He was on the FBI Cybersecurity, Cyber Terror Unit for 20 years. He's lectured at Harvard and Princeton. And if I read off the media stations that he's been on, we'd be here for the rest of the webinar. Mark Hurley, I've seen him on stage a number of times, very engaging speaker. Mark's personal mission is to protect his clients from cybersecurity threats. He runs a company called Digital Privacy and Protection. And the way I would describe that is it's kind of a cloaking device that is put over his clients, mostly high-powered executives and wealthy families. But his services are available to our clients through us. So more on that later. So let's hop right in. Jeff, you're up first. You
Yeah.
spent 20 years
Mhm.
chasing down these clients. So just in plain terms, how big is this? And really who and what are they going after?
Well, I wasn't chasing down clients. I was chasing down criminals.
All right, I got a red flag right away. Thanks for pointing that out. It's
Um,
our job to
well,
chase down clients.
here's the thing. No one really knows how big it is because you see the numbers thrown out there, like billions and even sometimes I've seen a $1 trillion number reached for in terms of, losses incurred by cybercrime victims. Some of these crimes don't even get reported where they're counted, so we don't really know what the numbers are. What I like to think not just the aggregate of total losses to victims and our economy. I like to think of the individual people that have been victimized, the amount of money they lost, or even if they don't lose money in some scams, they may get it back depending on the circumstances. It's the emotional loss. When someone's victimized, it really takes a hit. It's a disruption to your life. It's a direct disruption to the work you're trying to do. And sometimes that's even worse than the financial loss they may endure, although financial losses can be extraordinary as well. During my FBI career, I investigated, all sorts of crimes. I started out investigating organized crime. At that time, they were just doing bookmaking. They were running, loan sharking operations, extortions, and they ended up switching to commit healthcare fraud and to do cybercrime as well, the traditional mafia. But we're talking about organized criminals, not just like the Italian La Cosa Nostra. We're talking about major organized organizations throughout the world that are going after our money and going after our information if they can't get our money, because information can be converted to money. We're not talking about some people in a basement somewhere, one guy, a teenager trying to defraud us. You may have that once in a while, but we're talking about groups. They have customer service people. They have performance goals for their organization that they're in. They even have people that will do public relations for them. If a victim is victimized by a ransomware attack, for example, they have negotiators that will come in and negotiate the ransom payment. Professional negotiators that work for the cybercrime group. I mean, that's how sophisticated that it's gotten. And the key is, when it comes to these type of criminals, many of them are outside the United States. So the FBI can't get them here because the countries where they are doing their cybercrime activities don't extradite to the United States. So when you think about it, there's no consequences, there's no deterrence, and so the crimes continue. But unless we know their tricks, if we know their tricks, we could stay protected. And almost every time they're trying to take advantage of us emotionally, they're trying to make us not use the logical part of our brain, but the emotional part of our brain, and that could lead us to make bad decisions. It's a worldwide problem. We can't bring justice to them, so we just have to know how to stay protected and not use emotions to make decisions, and always verify before you trust the information that you're receiving, whether it's a link, an attachment in an email, or an evite that you said you got and you knew what to do, right? You verified before you trusted it. And if you can do those things, we'll keep ourselves safe from many types of cyber crimes that are out there.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. You've been up close and personal with this for over 20 years. Does a story come to mind that illustrates some of these people and their techniques?
I'll give you three into one. It all happened very recently to three people that contacted me and wanted to know, what they should do. First was a victim that received a phone call. The caller said it was their bank fraud department, and there was a problem with her account. It was being, someone was taking money from her account and they needed to protect it. And she did her due diligence, but only half of it. She contacted her banker and said, "Is this the number for the fraud department?" And that was the one that was on her caller ID, right? But it was spoofed. The banker said, "Yeah, that was the number. That's the number from our fraud department." She verified the number, but not the person, and they ended up getting access to her bank account, and she's still dealing with that today. Another person had the same basic thing happen, only they got her credentials to her bank account. It wasn't a phone call; it was a phishing email, and then they did a SIM swap on her phone, so the MFA, the multi-factor authentication codes, came to the criminal's phone, so they were able to log into her bank account and take out money. And she saw this was happening, but it was happening in the middle of the night, and she couldn't get in touch with anybody at the bank to stop the transfers out of her account. And she couldn't even call the phone company that where the SIM card swap had occurred to fix that problem as well, because it happened in the middle of the night, and they were only an 8 to 5 operation. And finally, a third person, a little different. they got a call from someone who said they were an FBI agent, and she did her due diligence, but only half of it. She checked the FBI's website in Baltimore, Maryland, and saw there was an agent by that name, but she didn't call the office to verify the person. She verified the name, but not the person. And they said her bank account was being used to facilitate fraud for a Mexican drug trafficking organization. And so she gave him control of the bank account, knowing or thinking they were actually FBI agents, and she was assisting them. And I can tell you this, the FBI, if they think you're involved in laundering money for a Mexican drug trafficking organization or any major crime, even unwittingly, they're coming to your house, right? They're not gonna call you, text you, or email you. They're going to show up and show you their credentials and ask you questions in person. But every one of those examples is tied together by trusting before verifying before you trust. And none of those three people did those things completely, and that led to the fraud in those cases.
They didn't do them completely, but I heard the words due diligence, I heard verification, I heard effort, but the criminals still got through. Incredible. We had a friend that got a phone call like that. They coached her to go to the bank. She pulled out $40,000 cash, and they told her to jam it in the ATM, and she lost $40,000. And she's not a dumb lady. So even if people are being careful, what's the single most dangerous misconception that smart, careful people have about their own safety online?
I can tell you what it is. People think that they can't be a victim because they're too smart, they're too educated, they've been in business for a long time, and they don't think they can be victims. The victims that I investigated, they weren't careless people. They were bankers, they were doctors, they were lawyers, and a whole slew of other type of occupations. Even former law enforcement, FBI agents have been victimized because they thought they couldn't be victimized, and they didn't take the steps to be careful and to verify things before before they trusted. Trust is not a security strategy. Verification is the security strategy. And they thought they weren't being careless, but it turns out the criminals took advantage of the emotions and made them do things that they thought were based on fact, and truly they were not, because they were being tricked by the manipulation through emotions. So again, I'll never fall for a scam. That's the misconception. Because if you think that, if you're not protected and you're not thinking, I could fall for a scam, I need to be careful, that's when you can be victimized.
I came so close to clicking that RSVP link last night as I felt honored to be invited to the party. But, like you say, it's overconfidence and that thought that it's not going to happen to me.
Mhm.
Well, thanks, Jeff. We're coming back to you. Mark, let's go to you. Mark, one of the unique things that I learned from you is you split protection into two halves. It's cyber privacy and cybersecurity. What's the difference, and why does it matter? And what should we be doing to make sure we're covered on both fronts?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, yeah, I commend you guys for doing this for your clients. As Jeff said, the cybercrime is exploding. Our company has never had a client get breached and lose money in the 4.5 years we worked for them. Touch wood, but we have a policy will help anybody who's been breached on a pro bono basis. So we got 4 people doing this full time right now, and it's wild how fast this is moving. But what shifted just in the last 15 months or so is that the criminals used to try to get directly into your accounts. And what they're finding is if you don't protect your cyber privacy, they can get around the protections in your accounts. So what cybersecurity is about is the basic stuff, which a lot of people don't do, which is using really robust passwords on your accounts, using certain, engaging multi-factor authentication, using certain technologies. Cyber privacy is about limiting and controlling the amount of information that's non-public about you that you're putting out for anyone to see. Now, this will probably surprise a lot of your listeners today, but if you have any modern technology, you are, unless you take a series of steps to prevent this from happening, you are broadcasting second by second what you're doing. And when I say cyber privacy, I don't mean your social security number. I don't mean your birthday. That's online. The government had 240 million records compromised 2 years ago. Experian had 110 million compromised. Companies are breached every single day and night. I mean, that stuff's out there. What you're really worried about is the minute by minute stuff that you're doing. And I know this may sound a little bit paranoid, but if you haven't turned on an enormous number of privacy settings and taking certain other steps that you need to do, you are broadcasting to tech companies what you're doing. Now, the reason this exists is because the tech companies have figured out there's much, much more money collecting and selling your information than there is providing you technology. So they set up all their technology so that on a default basis, you're just pumping information out. And what criminals do is they use that information to design customized attacks. Jeff touched on a couple of things that he's seen. Every day we're seeing new stuff, but what they'll do is they will profile you. They'll use AI software and they understand psychology extraordinarily well. In other words, if anyone's ever had a chance to study cognitive psychology, I know you've spoken to your clients probably about behavioral finance before. Human brain doesn't take information in and make decisions. What it does actually is it has a set of shortcuts that are designed to help you make quicker decisions. And they're hardwired into our brains so that we don't get eaten by the lion back when we were cavemen. And what we actually do is take information and compare it with reference points. And what the criminals will do is try to figure out those reference points because you're broadcasting so much information out. Additionally, they recognize that the way you protect your information is through communications. And what we're seeing across every attack that we see these days, and we had like 8 last weekend we helped people with, they're getting in the middle of that. And so you're either both protecting your cyber privacy and your cybersecurity, or you have neither. And what you have to most worry about now is that you don't know who you're talking to. I personally, for example, will not wire money to anybody if I don't get hand-delivered wiring instructions, because you just don't know. I can clone your voice. I can spoof, as Jeff said, you can spoof a caller ID. We've seen them spoof it for Fidelity. We've seen it spoof it for big organizations. This rat that you talked about is a type of a computer virus that will let me turn on will give me real-time information off your device, listen to your conversations, read your emails, and have even the ability to turn your camera on, turn on your microphone if you get one of these on your device. So you just have to sort of slow down, spend a real focus on protecting your cyber privacy first. Last thing, you touched this on an earlier slide, but when we're talking about protecting yourself, it goes away from just your money in your accounts. 80% of all home burglaries, according to a recent study last year, there are about 900,000 nationally. They found the burglars were going into the improperly protected social media accounts of their victims. In other words, they didn't turn all the privacy settings on. And your social media has location tracking software. And what the criminals do is they use that to figure out where you're at when they rob your house. We're also seeing criminals using the cyber privacy stuff and it's not just guys offshore anymore, it's local guys with guns, that they'll actually target you at home with this. So, we'll talk about later what you need to do to protect cyber privacy, but if you take anything away from this discussion, worry first and foremost about your cyber privacy, because without it, you don't have cybersecurity.
Awesome. So would you say privacy limits the ammunition and security guards the door? You really need both. And speaking of making this real, well, first of all, as you were talking, it reminded me of a quote from Andy Grove from Intel. He was one of the early CEOs of Intel. He said, "Only the paranoid survive." And we've got a little bit of a fun demonstration for you. Nelson freaked out his mother with this. Nelson, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I think as I'm hearing you talk there, Mark, this is really apropos. And what's the word of the buzzword of the day? Artificial intelligence. And it was just about a week ago, Google released a new model. And in this model, all I had to do was give it one selfie. And I set a series of about 5 numbers, 23, 63. And then I gave it a script. And the script I gave it was, believe it or not, this is not actually a video of me. It was generated by artificial intelligence using only a selfie. This video was created using Google's new model, and it's publicly available for everyone. And what we thought would be fun today is to just share exactly what that video turned out to be for clients, just so you can see really how hyper realistic these artificial intelligence models are getting.
Believe it or not, this is not actually a video of me. It was generated by artificial intelligence using only a selfie. This video was created using Google's new model. It is now publicly available for everyone. Believe it or not, this is not actually
So I think, everyone listening here, here's the resemblance in the voice and the tone and the cadence. So Mark, I'd love if you could just share, a little bit about what you see going on with artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and some of the cybersecurity risks
All
that
the
we're.
all the attacks we see now are driven by artificial intelligence. Jeff pointed to some of the different groups that are out doing this, and we traditionally think of these guys as offshore. They're increasingly coming onshore, and they're some of the earliest and most effective users of artificial intelligence. They've fully automated their attacks. And so, for example, every time you see a corporate data breach that's out there, AT&T had a giant one last year. They go in and grab all that information, the user IDs, emails, passwords, any personal information, and they will then throw it into very sophisticated computer algorithms and create thousands of variants and hit thousands of accounts at once. Now, they want to get into your financial accounts, but they also figured out if they can get into your cell phone account or if they can get into your email account, they can find a way to get around the protections and everything else. And what's making it so easy for these guys with AI is that there's a study out from a couple of years ago that shows if you're using, say, an 8 or 9 digit password, even if it's alphanumeric, uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols, it takes less than 1 second for them to guess. This is why a million times a week passwords are correctly guessed. And the only way a password today, because of AI, has any usefulness is it has to be at least 20 to 25 digits. It has to be completely unique. It has to be randomly generated, and it has to be alphanumeric. Otherwise, just use password because the bad guys are not even going to downshift. They're just going to go blow right by it.
Mark, I heard you speak one time. You talked about it's called the Paris apartment story. I was wondering if you could recount that for us
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, that's a really good illustrative one. For about 18 months ago, involved a family that was planning on buying an apartment in Paris. They were talking to their advisor about it by email because they were planning a trip and they were going to line up the money to go pay for it. Unfortunately, the family on an earlier trip had plugged a device into a public charging station at an airport. It was actually at JFK. But the public charging stations, which are really convenient, and I'm not talking about using a regular power cord, I'm talking about using the USB or USB charge, the ones that goes in the side. Those are very vulnerable to criminals infecting them. In fact, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal last summer where they sent a technician and a reporter out to JFK and found every single station was infected. We tell all of our clients, if you're ever going to plug into one of these things, you have to properly protect it. You have to get a little USB or USB blocker. It's a device that Tony can share more information with later, but it costs like $2. You buy it from Amazon or Walmart or Target. I carry a bag of 10 of these where I travel. But a family member had plugged one in without it, and they got a virus in. And the virus allowed the bad guys to access their email account. And they're using AI to read these things, so it doesn't take them very long. And they could see the family was planning a trip to go to Paris to buy an apartment. So they waited till the family got to Paris. They'd been there for a couple of days, and then they changed the password on the email account. They then emailed the advisor and sent a picture of the apartment saying, hey, we found it. We need $2 million. Now, the advisor, being a really good fiduciary, came back and said, wait a minute, we got to do a call to make sure this is legit. Well, the criminal said, no problem, for a couple of reasons. Number one, the family had not properly protected their cyber privacy. In other words, as I'll talk about later, there's an enormous number of settings that come with your technology you have to turn on. They had not turned those on. And this allowed the criminals to do two things. Number one, they could take information from those accounts and use that to clone their voices and images. And number two, there's just so much information being pumped out which people have no idea from their devices. If they don't do this, they could answer all kinds of questions that someone else, outside of the family would think they'd never have any information about. Additionally, the family had not done a good job of protecting their telecom account. They did not have a robust password on it. They didn't have a PIN on it. So as a consequence, the bad guys were able to go in and divert where the cell signal was sent. And what wound up happening is the advisor wound up doing a 45-minute call, who we thought was with the client, and it was not. Bye-bye $2 million. And this is like a daily event in my world. I see this, every day we see someone this happens to.
So, Mark, I think you mentioned before that this person was in the public sphere. She was a newscaster. Her voice and image were readily available. That happens to all of us when we're on social media.
And also, they can go to your social media account and just pull a video down from a friend. You don't even have to be a public figure. There's a YouTube video that will show you how to create one of these things for a Zoom call. And just like the one that Nelson just showed, your mother would not be able to tell the difference. There is a site for $4.95 will let you clone someone's voice and it'll defeat voice recognition software. That's how accurate and how easy it is to do these things these days.
Wow. So moving on, I want to engage both of you here. So let's say somebody does get hit. What do you do first? And what is sometimes people do things wrong in the first couple of hours because it's a very emotional, vulnerable time. What are the first moves that you make when you're being hit? Jeff, let's start out with you.
I think the first thing you need to do is act quickly to try to fix what's happened, what's gone wrong. A lot of people act much more slowly. They try to resolve the situation themselves. Any affected accounts that have been breached need to be you need to fix those right away. So I'd start with financial accounts and get those locked. Change a password on those accounts, change a password on your email accounts, your social media, or any place that you know they've been, but other places that they could get to based on them getting information from these other accounts as well. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be a hassle, but you need to address the access to those accounts, and that's mostly through changing the login credentials. But acting too slowly and contacting financial advisors, contacting banks, and changing those passwords is probably the biggest mistake that people make, as the damage could get worse.
Awesome. Mark, first moves,
Yeah.
biggest mistake.
Yeah. Well, first off, Jeff's right. You do not want to wait on these things. In our experience, when a family shows up on our doorstep who's been breached, they've been breached for about 2 weeks to 2 months before they realize this is going on. The criminals don't just come in and grab money. These are systematic and are organized in what they're doing. Now, the actual process for breach remediation is a diagnosis of exclusion. In other words, companies have very sophisticated software systems that if a company is breached, they can go in and do a forensic analysis and quickly figure it out. People don't. So when we do these things, the very first thing you have to do is you have to figure out how the device was not breached and then adjust for everything else. One of the problematic aspects about this is that if you have a virus on your device, particularly if it's a rat, you start changing passwords, they can just sit and copy them. And they do that all the time. What's also to keep in mind is, and I'll talk about this later, is that there's about 60 settings on an Apple device, about 120 settings on a Windows device that you have to engage, or your devices are automatically recording your user IDs and passwords to every account that you've accessed. And so the criminals, that's the first thing they do if they get onto your device, either by going with a virus, or we're seeing a lot of attacks now where you're at a bar or restaurant, you're not paying attention, someone looks over your shoulder, open your device, then they distract you, they grab the device. There was even an advisor telling me a couple of weeks ago they had a client got mugged right after you opened this device and they lost $300,000. And the reason is all the person's passwords are just sitting there and being recorded that people don't realize this. So what happens? Number one, Jeff is absolutely right. Freeze everything, period. Just freeze it. Then number two, you have to first determine whether there's a virus on the device or not. If there is, you're probably going to have to get it physically wiped. The sophistication of the viruses in the last 15 months has jumped geometrically. Then after that, you have to assume, if you've not turned these settings on, that every single password you have is compromised. And on top of that, you have to make sure that they haven't gotten into your telecom account, because they could also be diverting your cell signal. So the process for remediation consists of first eliminating viruses. Secondly, you probably need some technologies we'll talk about later, a password manager. You need to reset all your critical account passwords. You need to engage a litany of settings. You have to get to basic cyber hygiene very quickly. The other thing I'd emphasize, I'm sure Jeff will agree with this, if someone attacks you and gets some money, they're coming back. These guys are like sharks. They find a place to feed, they come back and keep feeding until they can't get any more food. So, now, and the other really salient thing that Jeff pointed out is you're going to have some PTSD if you're breached. Okay. I see this with all these families where we help. They just want it not to have happened. You just want it to be over. It's like, oh my God, how this happened. It's not any different than if someone robbed your house. You're not going to feel safe online. But you have to you can always contact us. We'll help you for free if you're breached to get it remediated. But you also got to understand that you're going to have to sort of gut it out, because your instincts are going to want to be to like go crawl under your bed and not even deal with this thing. It's traumatic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's say the worst happens and money leaves an account. These big companies, Merrill Lynch, Bank America, whatever it is,
Whoops. Tony, you froze. I can anticipate the question so we keep this going. How's that?
Yeah.
Tony was asking what happens if someone steals money. All right, I'm going to be Mr. Cheery here. If they get into your bank account, they get into your custodial account. You have signed an agreement that makes it at their sole discretion of the bank or the custodian if you're going to get the money back. Okay, I know this sounds
am I back?
surprising. You're coming back, Tony. I'm answering your question. What you have to understand that banks and custodians spend billions every year on cybersecurity. I mean, billions, and they lose billions every year. And most customers have no cybersecurity responsibility, and they're irresponsible. That's the politest way to describe it. So they've reached the point now that they've structured their agreements with their customers that leaves it up to them. And if you're even only indirectly at fault, they don't have to give you the money back. I mean, I can't tell you how many times when we have families who've shown up. We had a family show up last summer who lost $6 million. And the first thing I had to explain to them is they're not getting the money back because they were part of the fault. So when you think about this, everyone sort of thinks about, well, my bank has federal deposit insurance. Mm-hmm. Let's be clear. Federal deposit insurance is there in case the bank fails. It's not there in case someone gets into your account and you're even indirectly at fault. Same thing with custodial accounts. This is why everybody on this call has a compelling interest to take the steps necessary to operate safely online, because you are literally gambling whatever money you have in those accounts in case you do get breached.
We want to be your partner in protecting that. Am I back?
You're back, Tony. And I'll add to what Mark said. Everything you said, absolutely 100% correct. And I tell people that all the time, and they don't believe it. That no, my money's protected. Not necessarily, especially if you have some fault in the transfer of the money. But there is a chance, if it's done, depending on the situation, if it's done in enough time, you may be able to get money back that's been wired somewhere. If you notify the FBI, they have a program and a way to recall money if they're notified quickly enough, but not in all instances, and it depends on a specific set of circumstances. But they have been successful in recalling fraudulently wired funds in some cases.
Yeah, we had a family that was in a fake kidnapping that showed up on our doorstep. And they had convinced the mother they'd kidnapped her daughter, and she went to the bank to wire the money. The bank wouldn't. She went to another branch, and then they wired it. We got the bureau involved, and the bureau called the crypto company. The crypto company suddenly decided they wanted to return the money, but that's like 1 in 1,000. Yeah. You should start from an assumption. If they get into your bank account, they get into your custodial account, you sign an agreement, you're probably not getting the money back.
Let's talk about another real life situation. A grandparent gets a call. It's a grandchild's voice. They're in trouble. They need money right now. Walk us through exactly how to handle that situation.
Yeah, I could start with that, Tony. Well, first of all, if if you go back 20 years when I was working for the FBI, and if I got a call that a kid had been kidnapped, we would start getting hostage negotiators on standby. We call out the SWAT team. We get agents coming in on off duty to handle a physical kidnapping case. Now, if someone called the FBI and said, "I've had a child that's been kidnapped," we'll say, hang up the phone and call your child back at a number you know to be for them, because they probably haven't been kidnapped. But the first thing that people should do is to verify that it's actually a family member in trouble. And I would say the majority, if not a very, very high percentage of the time, it's not going to be someone that's actually in trouble. Jimmy hasn't been kidnapped. They haven't been arrested. They haven't been in a car accident. Hang up the phone and call Jimmy at a number you know to be for Jimmy to make sure they're actually in trouble. And also have a code word in the family. I know that sounds kind of silly and kind of like some kind of spy thriller or something. But if everyone has a code word that you've agreed upon, that's not texted to people, that's not put out on social media, obviously, that's a secret code word that you can say, if it's really a family member in trouble, yes, this is Jimmy. Jimmy, what's the code word? Then it's actually Jimmy. And, sounds a little bit silly, but it is very effective in determining if the person is really the person that they say they are. And as Mark said, with AI and voice cloning, video creation with generative AI, it's making it difficult to discern if a victim is really the person that they say they are.
Mhm.
Yeah, the other thing I would amend that to, where we're seeing the next level of these attacks, is they're not only posing as somebody, they're going in and diverting their cell phone. So, for example, that lady I told you about where the crypto was involved, they actually, the daughter had not, it was a grown woman, her daughter, and an older woman. The daughter had not protected her social media. So, one, they could figure out where she was unreachable.
Mhm.
And number two, they had not protected her telecom account. And so they went into the social media, cloned her voice, and then they diverted the cell phone. So when the mother called back immediately, they had a clone voice of the daughter calling for help. So what I would even take this further. First off, if something happens like this, immediately get some professional help. Number two, if someone says the guy's been arrested, call the jail. Okay. Don't, you can't, we're at a point now where nobody knows who they're talking to. Just touched on some of this stuff. I can spoof anybody's caller ID. So I can call you and have Parr McKnight's phone number show up on your phone. I can clone Tony's voice. I can even clone Tony's image. And by the way, unless you've taken all these steps we're talking about cyber privacy, I will know so much about you before I call you that it'll be, my God, there has to be a legitimate person doing this. So what I recommend is first and foremost, slow down. I know you're panicked because, oh my God, your kid's been grabbed. Number two, get some professional help immediately because they're taking these things to the next level. They're getting in the middle of communications. They figured out that's how you protect money. And you should never assume you actually know who you're talking to anymore online or with a phone call, because that's what the bad guys do to prevent you from protecting yourself.
I think we're all wise to the Romeo scams and the Nigerian princes. Jeff, any other stories come to mind? We got a little extra time, so if something else comes up that where you can illustrate some of these methods, we'd love to hear from you.
Two more that come to mind that are increasingly being used against senior citizens. The grandparent scam you mentioned, but also the romance scams. It can be used against somebody really of any age, but they target people who may have lost a loved one. It could be a widow or a widower. They engage in conversations through fake profiles, fake pictures, and now fake videos are being used. And they eventually, when they get to the point of trust, they ask for money. That is 100% of the time a scam. If someone you've never met in person asks you to send them money for whatever reasons they make up, but people are emotionally connected to this criminal, and they send the money. And once they send money, number one, it's impossible to get the money back after a certain amount of time. And then the second thing is, it's impossible to get the people in some cases from stopping to send money because they're trusting the criminal that they met, they haven't even met in person, that they only met online. They're trusting them more than they trust family members that tell them it's a scam, more than they trust FBI agents that come in and say, ma'am or sir, you are being scammed here. They trust the person that's doing the scam more than they trust people that they should be. So the romance scams are huge. It's generating large amounts of profit for criminals. But even more than that are tech support scams, where you get a call, an email, a pop-up, and it says there's something wrong with your computer. And there's so many different versions of this, right? The versions could be that it's gonna hurt your computer, and we'll just fix it for you, and you can send us a little bit of money by gift card. No company asks for gift cards that we normally work with, right, to solve problems, or to get cash in an envelope, or to go to a Bitcoin ATM where you put money in and it generates a Bitcoin number associated with a wallet of the criminal. The other versions of that scam include they've got access to your computer. The next thing that's going to happen is going to access to your bank account. And even after that, they may get access to your retirement funds, which people may have a lot of money in there. So we're going to help you resolve that situation, and we're going to move your money to a safe account. How many people are going to tell you your money is not safe where it is unless they're criminals? Financial institutions aren't going to do that, right? Apple isn't going to do that, and Microsoft isn't. And so they're scamming people by scaring them into thinking there's a problem and it's going to get worse. And that's a big red flag for fraud. And I've seen people put cash in an envelope. We're talking about people that have master's degrees, people that worked in organizations at very high level of responsibility. They retired, and within a few months, they're putting thousands of dollars in cash in an envelope for a courier to pick up because they're protecting their money from some computer cyber event. So tech support scams are generating 3 times as much profit than romance scams. We're talking about $1.5 billion last year. Just that's been reported to the FBI, and romance scams are only about 600 million or so. But still, I mean, and that's just what's reported. It's got to be a lot more than that. And they're taking advantage of emotions to get us to do things with the the emotional part of our brain where we might make many more mistakes than we would if we did it through logical thinking. Always remember, if something doesn't make sense, don't take that next step. But a lot of times they circumvent the logical part of the brain, so we don't realize things don't make sense.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I want to
Mark?
emphasize a couple of things here because Jeff's absolutely right. Because these are the attacks we're seeing. Number one, never open a financial account when someone calls you, no matter who you think's calling you. Period. There's not a bank, there's not a custodian, there's no one on the planet who runs a legitimate institution. If they think your account's at risk, is going to call you. What they're going to do is lock the account. They'll let you get an 800 number and spend 5 or 6 hours trying to get it open. Okay, understand they never will call you. But if you open the account, the money is gone. Taking what Jeff's talking about, we've seen examples where I'll give you a recent one. We had a family that, as a client of ours, they didn't lose any money, fortunately, because they followed what we told them to do. But they were trying to get a printer set up at home, and the criminals have gone in and paid up for the advertising, the Google rankings. So when you do a search for IT help, they show up at the top, and yeah. And so they're on the line trying to get the printer set up, and they got her to download a cool piece of software. Now, we had taken all the steps so her passwords weren't just sitting there, were in a secure online vault and all the stuff to have basic cyber hygiene. So the criminals were starting to get frustrated because normally they get onto the device, they got all the passwords, and then they're off the races. So then they tried to convince her to open a bank account while they're on the call, but she remembered never ever open the account. And fortunately, she called us immediately, and they put two rats, two remote access technology viruses, ones that let them get real-time information on your device. They put two of them on her device, and they were about to clean out every single account. So never ever open an account. Lastly, these romance scams. My former mother-in-law, she got caught up in one of these things, and Jeff is not overstating in any way, shape, or form of how sophisticated these guys are in studying human psychology. And I remember having a conversation with this woman saying, "This is a scam. This is what I do for a living. Don't follow it." And she still sent him 10 grand because she was convinced the love of her life, because she was a widow, the love of her life could only come to the US to meet with her if he sent her 10 grand.
Unfortunately, we had the same thing happen. Client called in, said there's a gentleman serving in the military. I'm in love with him. We need some money to unlock his mineral rights in Canada. And there was a lot of money sent out. And on the first phone call, the first request, same thing, Mark. We told her it's a scam. Don't do it. And the emotional pull derived from loneliness, I would think, was so strong that she just, and then she did a number of times. So this is real. All right, well, let's talk about reality. Let's approach our close with the 5 top things you can do. And Nelson, prior to going into that, I think there's a gentleman named Chris that was the head of cybersecurity at a logistics company. He popped a question in the chat. Why don't you ask these guys that, and then we'll go into the top 5. Do you see Chris's question about passwords?
I do, yeah.
Let's
We've
do it.
we've actually got a couple of questions, so maybe we'll hit the few that we do have. First is Chris's question. The question is basically, are you recommending that people do not use password safes? And specifically because the risk of a device getting compromised and having that password safe on that device.
First off, I think the term is password managers is the generic term for this. Do not use the Google or Apple password managers. Period. Just write that down, put it in stone over your bed for a couple of reasons. One, if they breach the operating system, they've got all your passwords. That's what most of the viruses are intended to do. We see this all the time. Additionally, Google, Facebook, and Apple regularly collect your passwords. They collect all your information. And part of that is that as part of the sweep, they grab all this stuff. And last summer, there was a story that came out. You can look it up. It was in Forbes and in Wired that some of their vendors have been compromised. And there are now 16 to 19 billion user IDs and passwords in a unified data set online that cybercriminals can access. This is how a lot of the attacks are being done. They already have your password before they go in. So if you haven't changed a password on an account in a long while, you probably want to do that. Now, what you should be using is a password manager. It's an online vault. It's not tied to the operating system. It's independent of the operating system. We recommend Keeper. We don't have a deal with them. It's what we use with our clients. Dashlane we think is pretty good. We think Bitwarden is pretty good. The other ones, we've looked at all of them. I would discourage LastPass because they collect and sell your information. They don't disclose that up front, but you can find that it weakens your cyber privacy. We're not sure about 1Password. They wouldn't answer questions about this when we were diligencing them. A lot of the other ones, you have to be very careful. If they're low cost or free, there's a reason why. They're collecting your information, but also one of my partners who used to run the Army cyber warfare strategy said they found that there were shell companies being set up by Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China that were creating these free password managers or low-cost password managers. And you're just basically giving them their information. So, I would limit it to those ones that we've suggested. But if you set them up correctly, you turn all the settings on your devices, as I'll talk about in a minute. So otherwise, you're recording the password to the password manager. But if you turn on those settings, you're not. Then they're really safe to use. And once they're set up, they're really easy to use.
Mark, I can add to that one thing. First of all, Keeper is a great password manager. That's one of the top ones that I recommend as well. But also, Mark, I'll just throw this out to you. We see more and more websites now offering consumers the ability to use pass keys, and not all websites offer that. Are you recommending that, Mark, from your angle?
Yeah, my partner, one of my partners is a guy who literally designed most of the nation's cyber warfare capabilities. His view is they're like the 8-track tape players of cyber, that it's kind of a fad. It's just a more sophisticated password, but candidly it's no more effective than having one that you've generated randomly and using otherwise. It's tied to there's a risk if you start using pass keys. If you aren't being really careful, you can actually get them recorded in the operating system of the device you're using, and if they breach the operating system, which is what most of the viruses do, they got them there too. For our clients, if they want us to use passkeys, we'll do it, but we'll put it into the password manager. It's no more secure or less secure than using a really sophisticated password. But if you're doing it on your own and you know what you're doing, there is a risk you want it recording it someplace on your device where if someone gets on the device, they got it.
Yeah, gotcha.
This is a lot of work. I feel like going off the grid, living in a cave and doing portfolio reviews with Morse code by smoke signals. Nelson, let's wrap it up with the top 5 from each, and then I know you got some closing words.
Wonderful.
And guys, we can take a little bit of time and add some detail to the top 5, so feel free to do that.
Okay.
I'll start with mine if it's okay.
Yep. Just run through them all. Yep.
Something we haven't talked about is freezing your credit reports. And that prevents new accounts from being opened in your name where it requires a credit check, such as a credit card account or other financial accounts, people getting loans in your name. It's easy to freeze your credit reports. It's free. You can lift the freeze anytime you want to get credit checked yourself. And you should do it with all 4 credit reporting agencies, including a smaller agency called Innovis that a lot of people forget about, Innovis. So freeze all the major credit reporting agencies plus that one, and that'll keep you safe from many types of fraud. We already talked about using strong excuse me. The second thing, create a Social Security online account. This is particularly important if you're 62 or older, because if someone sets up a Social Security account because you don't have one, they could set one up using a stolen identity if they have your personal information and have your benefits sent or redirected to their bank account. That's a big mess to unwind with the Social Security Administration. And having your own online account prevents them from doing that. So that's done at ssa.gov. It's called your My Social Security account. We've talked about using a password manager. That's number 3 on my list. We've talked a little bit around using multi-factor authentication. That's when you get a code that comes to your mobile device. Even better than that is using an authenticator app, which is not tied to the simple message service or text messaging and vulnerable to SIM card swapping. So have that for all the accounts that you can use for multi-factor. If they offer it, use it. Especially for financial accounts, email accounts, and social media, which are big targets for criminals. And then we've talked about this a lot today. Before any money moves from your account based on any request at all, make sure you're calling to verify that the request is legitimate, the people requesting it are legitimate. You verify before you trust. And
Terrific.
That's my 5.
That's great. And Jeff, what I wanted to mention here is you've been very kind. You put together a 4.5 or 5 page executive summary. All the major credit reporting agencies are on there, I believe, and
Yep.
that'll be as a follow-up to everybody on this webinar. So, Mark, what about your top 5? Talk us through those if you would.
All right. The dirty secret of our business is it's not really hard to operate safely online, and everybody can do it. What you need to do is what's called basic cyber hygiene. If you don't do all these steps, don't bother with the rest of them because it's like building a fort and you're forgetting one of the walls. And what do they consist of? We've kind of talked about this already. If you're going to have an online account, or for that matter, have any smart home technology connected to home Wi-Fi or your home Wi-Fi, it's got to have a unique, randomly generated 20 to 25 digit alphanumeric password. Otherwise, don't bother. They can just guess it, and they will. Number 2, your technology that you get comes with a bunch of features that are not turned on. As I mentioned, tech companies make most of their money collecting and selling your info, but they don't want to get sued if something bad happens. So what they do is they set it up so on a default basis, you are broadcasting information, you're recording passwords, you're doing all this kind of stuff. But they give you the ability to opt out. And in order to opt out, you have to turn on an enormous number of settings. For most families, it's about 900 settings. They're on your devices, your search engines, your browsers, and your apps. You have to remember, though, if you don't turn these on, you're a sitting duck. You don't have cyber privacy. You don't. It is very easy to get to you if you don't things on. They're both privacy and security settings. It takes a while to figure these out, but also keep in mind that these companies make so much money collecting and selling your information that this is not a one-time thing. For example, Facebook, Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, they make 60 billion a year collecting and selling your information. They don't like it when you turn settings on. So all these organizations change their settings about every 6 months. So you should plan and not all at once, I might add. So you need to come back in every 4 months and update this. Additionally, you have to be self-aware if you're on public Wi-Fi. Anyone else in that network can look into your device. So if you're going to do anything that you wouldn't want someone else to see, you need to make sure you encrypt your online traffic. And in order to do all these passwords and to encrypt your online traffic, you'll need some really basic, inexpensive technology. We talked about a password manager. It's encrypted software. Once you get all your accounts in there, you get all the links in there, you get all the passwords, and the software will even generate for you these passwords if you wanted to. All you have to remember is the password to get in. And like with our clients, we even set it up with facial recognition because in many ways that's more secure. You also will need what's called a virtual private network. It's a fancy term for saying a piece of software that when you're on public Wi-Fi, you turn it on if you don't want someone to see what you're doing. It encrypts your online traffic. We recommend a company called Surfshark. And the third thing you'll need to get a piece of a private email account. What the criminals have figured out is if they can get into an open device or just to get into your email account, what they can do now is go to any online account you have and click on the forgot password link, and they can reset all your passwords. The way you preclude that is you go in and have a separate email for what's called account recovery purposes. You don't want to use a free email for this because AI, they can find it in a second. You want to get a pay for email, just put your initials on it, and you set it up so the only way someone can get to that email is by opening up the password manager. Otherwise, they can get around all your protections very, very quickly. As should be clear from this class, this is all moving very, very quickly. We teach classes. I got one starting in about 5 minutes for another group. And the classes change almost month to month because what the bad guys are doing is evolving very, very quickly. So if you really want to operate safely online, you got to have education, more education, and more education. Otherwise, they'll just find a way around everything you're doing.
Outstanding. We're going to pop in one more question. Nelson, Randy had a question about LifeLock. I'm just going to put that out there because, Mark, I've talked to you about LifeLock, and I don't think you thought it was the greatest service in the world.
Look, identity protection services are pregnancy tests. What you need is birth control. Okay, they will let you know you've been breached. Congratulations, you just lost a bunch of money. Hello. They really focus on social security numbers and stuff like that. That stuff's out there. Look, these things, I don't dislike them for 3 reasons. One, they don't protect you. Number two, they actually collect and sell your information, which makes your cyber privacy worse. But worst of all, they come with these so-called insurance policies or reimbursement guarantees that give you a false sense of protection. If you read the policies, I would stipulate they are uncollectible. They're set up so, first off, if you have most commonly, if you have what's called simple negligence, which is a legal term meaning I made a mistake anywhere along the way, you don't get your money back. They're out for the insurer. And number two, they're not first loss policies. So, like, let's say you lose a couple million, you can't go collect it from them. You have to go sue your advisor, your custodian, your bank, anyone who's partially liable, spend millions of dollars, many, many years, and then only then you can take them to arbitration. If you lose the arbitration, you're probably going to have to pay their legal fees. Look, LifeLock was set up by a con man while the con man was in prison. Okay. And then it was bought by Norton. And Norton got caught recently using its customers' computers to mine for Bitcoin without their permission. Okay. Again, just stay away from these things. It's a waste of money.
All right.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Good. Well, before Nelson takes us across the finish line, I'm going to say, and don't leave yet, but I'm going to say thank you for being with us. We care about you. We care about your family. We care about your wealth. We intend on doing this once or twice a year at least. This is kind of like hygiene is kind of like showering. You don't do one and done. This needs a repeat. This needs work. This needs attention. And I might say it needs a little bit of paranoia applied to it also. We don't want it to happen to us, and we are the target. Nelson, take us across the finish line.
Yeah. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much to both Jeff and Mark. Obviously, a really, really important discussion. And so having you here to share your wisdom, your expertise, that's super helpful to us, but also to everyone else on the call. So really appreciate your time. I guess what I'll leave the attendees with here is, as your advisory team, we are a part of your defense system. And so at Parr McKnight, we take cybersecurity incredibly, incredibly seriously. We're held to an incredibly high legal bar. The SEC is who we report to. And so there's rules and regulations that we're required to follow. In addition to that, we hire a cybersecurity consultant that works with us every single week to make sure our systems are as buttoned up as they can be. We use enterprise grade level tools like Microsoft Defender, Microsoft E5, and we have documentation on incident response plan, vendor due diligence, and all of these policies and procedures that we have in place go to ultimately protecting our clients and the assets that are entrusted to our firm. We hire guys like Jeff and Mark to help our clients where they can and to put on presentations like this. And so we just want you to know that, if you ever have a question or if ever something doesn't sit right with you, we're a great call to make. We want to be that first call so we can help you sort through, any of the situations that might just raise a little bit of a red flag for you. So again, thank you all for attending. We will send a follow-up. There'll be a checklist in there, some resource links, information about both Jeff and Mark. And I'll leave you with the last line here. This is an important topic. And so if you think that anyone else could benefit from watching a replay, we're going to get that up on our YouTube. And we ask you share it with Francis. And you might be thinking to yourself, who's Francis? Well, it's your friends, your relatives, your acquaintances, neighbors, coworkers, even your enemies, even strangers.
Yep.
Seriously, you guys, this topic is so important. We really thank you for being here, and we'll leave you with that. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye,
Terrific.
everyone.
Thanks, Nelson. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.